Are you tracking the foreclosures in Southern California? Well, if you are, you need to watch the Southern California Foreclosure Report. We are going to run through the latest numbers for Southern California for notices of default, notices of trustee sale, and the number of homes that went back to the bank in July of 2022. It's a shockingly low number. And make sure you stick around to the end because we're going to talk about where are all the bank-owned homes going. Hey there, Christian Walsh, real estate agent with Wire Associates. We are helping buyers and sellers like you make the best data-driven decisions in this crazy market. Once a month, we pull the latest numbers from Black Knight and show you exactly what's going on in Southern California. So if you're ready to dive into the notices of default, notices of trustee sale, and REO numbers for LA, Orange County, San Diego, San Bernardino, Riverside, and Ventura counties, you have one thing to do, and that is hit that like button. And let's get started. Let's dive into the Southern California foreclosure numbers. We're going to start at the first step. That's the most logical place to start, and that's the notice of default. So someone has missed a payment. 120 days later, the notice of default can be filed. Doesn't necessarily mean it is. And in fact, it takes much longer in California for a foreclosure process to occur. We are looking at month-over-month numbers going all the way back to July of 2021. The foreclosure moratorium ended in July of 2021. And you can see that there was a jump in the notices of default into August. They stabilized and then dropped in December, which is typical. Around the holidays, lenders will slow down on the foreclosure process. After the first of the year, it went up, and then March, April, May, we saw the big increases. If you've been watching our videos, you saw this notice of default increases, but we're going to put this into context. We have a lot of catch up to do on foreclosures just to get to normal numbers because of the foreclosure moratoria that we had that were just over 2 years. One other thing to note is we do see that the notices of default for Southern California, for Los Angeles and a few other counties, peaked in May and have since dropped. And we can see that in July that they are down. And again, this is the first step. So these properties first will have to receive the notice of default before they can move through the process to ultimately come out the other side as a bank-owned home if they make it that far. And more month-over-month numbers helpful to look at. When the foreclosure moratorium ended, you can see the dramatic spike we had in the notices of trustee sale. So you have your 120 days and then you get the notice of default. 90 days later, you get the notice of trustee sale, and it has a date when the trustee sale will happen. Again, it takes longer than this. Most properties aren't rushed through. The date of auction must be at least 21 days after the notice of trustee sale is issued. So you can see the big spike we had in August and September of 2021 after the foreclosure moratorium ended. That was related to what I've been calling low-hanging fruit. Those are properties that had a notice of default filed before COVID or were vacant, and the lenders were able to move forward very quickly with the foreclosure process. So you can see the spike, then the dip. We can see it peaked again in January, but we haven't had numbers hit, at least in Los Angeles. Let's get Los Angeles out of the way. Look at some of the other counties. So we do see a peak at the beginning of January 2022. Things went up a little bit, but we're down in most of the Southern California counties. Don't forget, if you subscribe to our email newsletter, you can look closer at the data and get rid of some of these counties as well to focus on the ones you would like to see. So we're going to put this into context to see if these numbers are shocking and we're getting close to any sort of wave. It doesn't look like we've actually come close to our previous peak of August and September of last year. We'll have to see what happens in August and September of this year. Of course, if you're subscribed to this channel, you're going to get that foreclosure update. And context. And how do we get context? We are going to look at July's going back into the past. So looking at the same time periods year over year. And you hear in the news that there's an increase in foreclosures, especially when you look at the year-over-year numbers. If you compare them to 2021, not a fair comparison because we were in the midst of a foreclosure moratorium. So when you hear about the big increases year-over-year in the foreclosure process, it doesn't mean much because we didn't have much in the way of foreclosures. And you can see in these numbers here, only a few private lenders and a few lenders were actually able to move forward with foreclosure in 2020 and 2021. And even more context, we put in data from 2011. That's about as far as we can go back thanks to Black Knight. They sunset the data, but you can see, look, hey, you look at Los Angeles, 512. That's more than we've seen in 2015 through 2021, and it appears to be approaching 2011. We'll put this into more context with the notice of trustee sale, the second phase in foreclosure. Notices of default were starting to taper by 2011. But notice of trustee sale, you have to see these numbers. And looking at the notices of trustee sale for July's going back, this helps put it into context. You can see when you look at the second phase of foreclosure that we are nowhere near years in the past. So as the second phase in the process, we're not yet getting to what is building into any sort of wave of foreclosures. But of course, we have to keep tracking this to see how many more properties go into the notice of default and subsequently how many kick into the next phase of notice of trustee sale. And this helps put it into context when we include the 2011 data for notices of trustee sale. Huge numbers in 2011 compared to what we have now. We're at 1/10-ish of where things were in July of 2011. And an important point to note back then is 2012 spring is when the market shifted to the point where homes started to fly off the shelves. 2011, these properties that you're seeing in the notice of trustee sale phase, a lot of these ended up becoming bank-owned homes because the owners had no equity. They couldn't sell the home and walk away with any cash. Majority were upside down. And there weren't any of the mortgage forbearance programs like we had during COVID. The short sale process was ineffective and overwhelmed at that time. So it was very difficult for folks to be able to take advantage of short sales. So it was a very different era, very different time. And then let's look at the real estate owned, the REOs, the bank owned homes. And you can see going back to 2015, we had a lot more than we have now. These are tiny numbers. I'll get some of the counties out of the way. Let's go ahead and take a look at Orange County where we're based. And we can see 2015, 41 homes in July went back to the bank. This has dwindled over time until we got to 2020, 2021, and 2022. One in the month of July. So if you're looking for a bank-owned home in Orange County, you're not going to find many coming to the market. And the other important thing to remember, and we should probably release content on this, is that even this home going back to the bank in July of 2022 here, it may not hit the market for 6, 9, 12 months. Depends on who's living there, if they have a lease, depends on the condition of the property, depends on whether it's being contested, whether there's any issues on title. There's a lot of things that will slow that property coming. So don't hold your breath for that one house that was foreclosed on in Orange County that went back to the bank. And when I say normal level of foreclosures, you can see that there were more bank-owned homes coming to the market in the past. And I want to put it in context and show you during the COVID years, starting in 2020, what it looks like, the number of homes that go back to the bank. These are tiny numbers. In all of Los Angeles, we have 14 homes that went back to the bank in July of 2022. And don't forget that we're real estate agents based in Southern California. If you have any questions about the foreclosure process or you're facing foreclosure yourself, make sure you reach out for help. We have a link below. Where did all our bank-owned homes go? Well, there's a few pieces of the puzzle. One is we had a foreclosure moratorium going on. So naturally that led to fewer homes being foreclosed on because most lenders couldn't. So that's partly why we see the numbers drop, particularly in 2020. The next thing we had is in lieu of people losing their home because they couldn't pay due to COVID-19, we had a very successful mortgage forbearance program that was in place that allowed a lot of folks who needed the help to stop making payments. That also led to fewer foreclosures. And an important point, we're not seeing a lot of those folks ending up in foreclosure because the program was successful. People were able to get back on their feet or refi or tack on the payments onto the end. So this is a very successful program. And the other important point is we had record levels of price appreciation that started in 2020 and have continued to go on, though things are slowing. The price appreciation levels are coming back to more normal levels. But with this price appreciation, people aren't upside down anymore. So even if you can't make your payments, you're not able to qualify for the forbearance program, you can sell and make money. So you don't need to go through the foreclosure process. And that's why we're seeing fewer homes make it all the way through. And the last thing is investors. If the property ends up getting all the way to the foreclosure auction, investors are most likely going to buy that property because they are looking to flip. Now, the flipping market has slowed down, so maybe we'll start to see more homes make their way through the foreclosure process, but it won't be a huge wave. We don't have the notices of default and notices of trustee sale to show that a huge wave of foreclosures is coming. Are you tracking foreclosures in your market? Make sure you sign up below for a foreclosure.com account so you get the data before anyone else. If you'd like straight to your email inbox all REO and short sale homes, land, and multifamily buildings in Southern California, sign up below. We have a link so you'll receive that. In addition, you'll receive our free weekly email newsletter. Comes out every Sunday and keeps you in the loop on what's going on in SoCal and beyond. And let's hear your foreclosure updates below. Let me know what you're seeing out there, and let me know if you have any questions related to foreclosures in Southern California and beyond. Thanks for tuning in. This has been Christian Walsh, real estate agent with Wire Associates, and we want to hear from you.